The Health and Human Services Committee meeting will convene. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Ortman.
Present.
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Behringer.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderman Arnowitz.
Here.
Alderwoman Hubbard. And Chairwoman Flowers.
Present.
We have 6 present, and we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Board Bills 145 and 146. We're going to take up Board Bill 145 at this time. Valerie Russell is here to speak on Board Bill 145 and 46, but we're going to take up 145 at this time. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about Board Bill 145? Once you get
I don't have
adjusted
the
in the
benefit of the numbers, so if you could.
It's a $250,000
Okay.
grant.
So the Department of Human Services has been receiving an appropriation from the State of Missouri Department of Corrections. This would be the 3rd appropriation to implement reentry services for former offenders who are no longer in the custody or the supervision of the Department of Corrections. So these are individuals who have served all of their time and are being released back to the community. This particular pot of funds, to be honest with you, we did not know it was coming. We were in the process of ending the work under the 2nd appropriation, which would end December 31st. We were notified about 3 weeks ago by email with the attachment that you have, which is the agreement that we were getting $250,000 more dollars, and that we have until June 30th of 2017 to spend it, which is a Herculean task, if I can just share that with you, because of the type of work that needs to be done to recruit the individuals and get them to comply with the terms of the different programs that they will be entering. So the funds, again, are to provide reentry services, which include employment services, housing, physical health, mental health, substance abuse, social services, case management. They are provided with a variety of different things once they leave the prison, or if they're already released into the community. Those things include clothing if they're about to start a job, food cards, gift cards so that they can get bus passes and other things to set themselves up in apartments. They are assisted with housing expenses for a limited period of time, not to exceed 6 months, and that is then to be borne by themselves because they also have to go through employment placement activities. And we have had, over the last 2 years, 2 different entities who are providing those services. This money will only allow us to contract or extend a contract with one of those. Our plan is to extend the contract with the Father's Support Center. And the Father's Support Center has a history, a very rich history of working with the men, primarily men who are released. They also have the connections to get those individuals reintegrated with their families and children. So we think that that's a good opportunity to continue that. If there are any questions, I'm ready to answer them.
Okay, let's take questions from the committee. Alderman Ortman, you have any questions?
I don't think so. I mean, it sounds good anytime we get free money.
Yes. Okay, Alderman Boyd?
Yes. What's the reason you can only subcontract with one agency versus the 2, and who's the other one?
Okay. The other one that we currently have another contract with is the Center for Women in Transition. And the Center for Women in Transition is a collaboration between itself and 4 other agencies. So each of those agencies not only is providing a level of service to those individuals who are being released, but they also take funds for their own administrative costs. So to reduce the administrative burden on the $250,000, we are just going to subcontract with one entity, thereby putting more money available for the direct services for those men and women who are coming out.
And how many clients do you think they would be able to serve with this $250,000?
I have not,
Can you give me a pen?
excuse me, I have not requested a budget yet from the entities, but typically the cost per participant ranges from $2,800 to $4,000 a piece. And that is direct services for the client. So within the Father Support Center's contract, they hire one case manager, and that is the person who is working with those individuals. And then they use a portion of their job developers' time to also assist those individuals. The rest of the money gets used for the former offender directly. We don't give them any cash, but everything that they need from the point that they're released, that's what the Father Support Center will be using the majority of that budget for. So I would have to guess, without seeing a budget, that perhaps $200,000 of that $250,000 will go directly to the direct services for the individuals.
Does your office track the recidivism rate?
Yes, it's required under the grant that they provide to us on a quarterly basis whether or not that individual has not only gotten any other offenses, but if they have been put back in jail. And I don't have that information in front of me right now for what's taken place since 2014, but we've had funds from the state since 2014 to implement this, and I can get that kind of information to you.
I'd appreciate it from both agencies,
Okay.
just year to date.
So
or
with the
their
Father
last
Support
annual.
Center, the contract in 2014 with the Father Support Center was not for the full-blown array of services.
Okay.
When we got the initial grant, which was back in 2014, that was $750,000. $20,000 of that went to the Father Support Center to provide legal services to those individuals, so that if they had other cases that they had not cleared, they would have the benefit of an attorney to assist them with that. All the other funds went to the Center for Women Transition and its partners. Their partner agencies were Employment Connection, Provident, Criminal Justice Ministry, and Center for Women in Transition. The Center for Women in Transition only saw women. The other agencies saw men. So I can get you that recidivism rate for them.
Okay.
The Father Support Center in 2015, when we got a second allocation, we expanded their contract to include the full-blown array of services, including legal services. So I can get you their recidivism rates from November 2015 to now.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Could she get that to you and get it for all of us?
Yes, I made a note of that, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Alderwoman Behringer.
Thank you. I do have questions. So, just out of curiosity, while it's wonderful that all of a sudden we have money, was it because the Missouri Department of Corrections, did this money come from the feds to the Missouri Department of Corrections, or was this leftover money and they said, let's put it here?
It was not federal dollars.
Okay.
This is state funds that have been appropriated, and I asked the question because this kind of came out of the blue, and it's a very short period of time in which to plan and to spend the funds. But it's my understanding that the governor's office asked for the appropriation. There is a reserve, a holdback of 3%. So even though we are being awarded $250,000, 3% of that will be held back, and the governor will release that at their discretion at some point in the period. Our experience with them has been that they do not release the reserve. So when I look at what we're going to award to the contractor, I will have to reduce it by 3%. And then if we are told we're going to get the money, we'll do an amendment
Okay.
for that
So,
amount.
all right, that, right there, I know exactly what happened. All right, thank you. The other question I have is, you said there was 2 that you contract with. Can you tell me if they're both United Way agencies?
The Father Support Center is. I don't know if the Center for Women in Transition is, but all of their partner agencies are. Criminal Justice Ministry, Employment Connection, and Provident all receive money from the United Way.
Okay, I would like to know if the one you're not sure of is a United Way agency.
Can I borrow
By
your
chance.
ink pen?
Sure.
Thank you.
And then on that same note of when we do a program, are they required to give you the outcomes and deliverables from that grant?
Yes. The state requires quarterly information, and that's the deliverable. The state requires on a quarterly basis that we tell them the name of the individual that they serve. We attach a number to that. They want to know exactly what services they received and the dollar amount associated with those. And then we also have to tell them the recidivism rates and whether someone dropped out. Beyond that, with the legal services, when we had those as a part of the project, we looked at the number of cases that individuals were assisted with and whether or not that assistance allowed them to go further into the program.
So a lot of nonprofits with these type of programs, what they have to do is when they offer the classes or they have a session with a psychiatrist or whatever, those hours have to be logged so they can see each person who received the services and how many hours they actually participated in the programs. So they can see that here's where this amount happened, and that is clearly where we're getting better results versus here. So each year they can figure out how to better put their programs together. So that's why I was asking if we followed to see how many classes did they take, how many times do they show up, how does this, so we can better track it and figure out where we need to focus to make sure we take care of this this particular population so they don't go back. And that's the goal.
So the detail that you are raising would be viewed when we do a programmatic monitoring of each of these agencies and we look at the client files. In those, you'll see the notes from the case manager when individuals came and didn't. The types of classes, however, there are not that many classes that they attend. So those individuals who may come out who are sex offenders and go through therapy, that particular therapy has a requirement that they attend so many times.
Okay.
But it's not a class. The employment phase of this, Employment Connection, if you're familiar with them, they require individuals to go through a World of Work workshop in advance of them going through the job placement and job search component.
Well, I
So
used the
you can
wrong
see
term.
that. Okay.
I did not mean class. I did mean like a workshop or a therapy session so that we can see what is actually working so we can focus on that. And that was my only thing. I just want to make sure that we are,
It is being tracked.
okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Howard?
You mentioned that, you have this money, but it's a challenge is the challenge in recruitment of the individuals?
Okay, so there are two challenges. Individuals who are already out and on the street. We do not have the best mechanism for
Reaching out.
announcing to the public that these services are available. So we rely upon other social service providers to refer individuals to it. And we let the courts know that this program is going on in case somebody does show up and they've got a minor charge, an ordinance violation, and they see that this person had a prior offense and was incarcerated, and they can refer. So that's the pool of individuals who are already in the community. The greater difficulty is those individuals who are about to be released. We get information from the state on a weekly basis, the names of individuals and what state facility they're in. And they give us those names when they're 60 days away from being released because they've completed their sentence. So that population may or may not be interested in going back into something very structured when they've been in jail for years and years. They want their freedom. When they get into this program, there are very strict requirements of their actions and behavior and reporting. And it's because we have a very short period of time in which to move them on into self-reliance. So you may recruit while they're in jail, but when they come out, you can't put your hands on them. You may get applications from individuals, and our subcontractors have a mechanism for getting information to the wardens to put applications in the hands of all of those people who are about to be released, and we may not get any applications back. Or we may get a handful, but as soon as they leave, they decide they're not coming to St. Louis. This money can only be used for individuals who intend to come to St. Louis. So if they don't come here and they decide, well, I sent you an application, but I've got family and I'm going to Hannibal, then that's not a person. We put money into the outreach efforts of our subcontractors to try to generate that individual, but we don't get the outcome in terms of actually enrolling them. So they are in communication with those individuals while they're in jail. They also visit the St. Louis Community Release Center that's here. They go into the county jails. They go into the city jail just to see if there are any individuals who are pending a court date and who are released from prison, to see if they could do some outreach. So
What about probation officers?
if they are on probation
I
or
mean,
parole,
sometimes
they're
are they
not
released?
eligible. They
Oh,
cannot
okay.
be under the supervision of anyone in order to receive
okay.
these dollars. That's the other caveat.
Okay, so
They have
in
to-
other words, if they were, like, say somebody was on probation and they're for 6 weeks, I don't know exactly how this works, but, you know, when they first get out, are they allowed, after they get off probation, can they refer to you then?
So if they are under the supervision of any state entity, they cannot
They
enroll
see
in
that
this
as
program.
duplication of services?
They will not allow it, because they also have other programs within their state probation offices for individuals. If they're under city probation for an offense, say it's an ordinance violation, they could be considered.
Okay.
That's why they go into the city jails, to see if there's any more.
And you said $4,000 to $5,000 per person is what you spend normally?
There's a range of about $2,800 up to $4,000. And we approve that because if the individual has no family, and this case managers think unless we can stabilize this person, they're gonna become homeless and they're just gonna be transient and there's no shelter space, let's put them into apartments. So the majority of that funds gets used for temporary housing.
So there are hard goods provided along with the soft goods of services?
Oh, definitely, the majority of it is hard goods.
So in other
it's
words.
rental
if-
assistance
okay,
or.
maybe setting up an
there's-
apartment?
Setting up an apartment, it could even be paying for a motel for 2 or 3 days to stabilize that person when they first get out, so they can put their hands on them.
Okay.
Because otherwise they're roaming, and you don't know
Right,
where
and
they
you
are.
can't, yeah.
Right.
Okay. All righty then. Thank you. Very informative.
Alderman Ornowitz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So Ms. Russell, from listening here and gathering, so we have an agency or someone who stays in contact with the incarcerated inmates who's ready to get out and forward the farms if they're interested in doing this.
Correct.
So it's their choice, basically, and of course, it's for St. Louis City and St. Louis County. But I guess the only thing that, I mean, personally to me, and I guess rules are rules, so if I'm getting out and I have 3 years probation, so I'm not eligible for that program for 3 years. Till I finish my probation, I mean, just personally, I just think sometimes, I think a lot of inmates that can have a chance to get that help and transition back would like to take advantage of it, because if you're on probation and 3 years down the road, you're not, most likely not even gonna think about trying to get in the program then. But I mean, I like the concept of it and everything, I just, I don't know why they include the probation period, but I think it's a good thing to transition them. whether you're on probation or not, because you want to get acclimated back to life as it is.
I don't disagree with you. However, the state of Missouri dictated the terms
Right.
of who could be served
no.
and who couldn't. And so I believe that they're thinking, if I can speak for them without having this
Mhm.
directly from them, because the probation office of the state also serves individuals in other programs, and they subcontract with other entities, not these monies, to assist those individuals to stabilize themselves. This is just another piece.
Okay, so there's other tools out there. if they're
There are
on
other
like
tools out
like you said, they go see their probation officer, they can suggest things and everything else, so. Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. If I can just add that these funds were originally requested by Jamila Nasheed and during the first appropriation, and she fought very hard for a second appropriation. And we're thankful for this third, but we just need to make sure it gets approved quickly because it takes a while to get through the contracting process with the city. So it sometimes is 2 months before we can execute a contract, and so we're looking at December before we can actually hand off a contract to the individual and say, okay, now you can start serving and using those funds.
Okay, Valerie, I just have a few questions. So, I guess I'm just gonna play, I don't really know the circumstance, but someone can be released from prison without being on probation or parole?
That's correct. It's called a 12-12er, or there are individuals who come out of jail and, or prison, and they have served all their
Time
terms.
they're done.
They're done, and those are the individuals that we are to see.
And what is the percentage of
I
folks
don't know
being
if I can
released?
ask for, or answer that in terms of a percentage. However, I can tell you that the list that we received from the Department of Corrections, IT individuals on a weekly basis always has about 50 to 90 names. All of those are not going to return to St. Louis.
Because I can see if you had violated a city ordinance, maybe getting out, and not being on probation or parole, but if you are in a prison, I guess as you said, there are sentences, once time served, you walk away, there's no monitoring after that.
Right.
You said the majority of the money is used for housing, but you know, we have a lot of issues in our community dealing with substance abuse and mental health. So what is offered for the person that is seeking substance abuse support?
So, if I gave you the impression that the majority of it was used for housing, that is not correct. I indicated that we have a range up to $4,000 because housing is a part of that.
Gotcha.
But there's an individual plan that's done on each of these individuals. So if they come out and they had a substance abuse problem, a mental health problem, if they were there because of a sex charge, then those services are also a part of this that are being subcontracted with. Provident Counseling does the substance abuse and mental health treatment, and they also provide services to sex offenders. When we, in the contract with the Center for Women in Transition, which ends in December 31st, it will be the responsibility of the entity that gets awarded the $250,000 to subcontract with Provident or another provider for those same services, because the Father Support Center does not do that type of treatment. They send individuals to treatment providers and they pay for that treatment.
And so far, we've received this grant for, you think, since 2013,
2014.
2014. Okay. 2 years. Okay, are there any more questions for me?
Yes, I have a follow-up question. Valerie, just occurred to me, when I think of Father Support Center, I think of all the great work they do with fathers, you know, being in the lives of their children. How long have they been doing reentry? For some reason, I'm disconnected from what I know them to be to what you're saying they now offer.
So the Father Support Center, and one of the reasons why we've worked with them is that, yes, they do work with fathers and they have other monies that they utilize. But they have a federal grant from the Office of, it just skipped my mind. They've got federal dollars to do reentry, and they've got state dollars to do reentry with other populations. I believe this is about their 5th year.
Oh, Okay.
And just for the record, Father Support Center is located where?
They are located at the Prince Hall facility at Carter and Newstead.
And the Women in Transition is located where?
They are located on South Broadway,
Okay,
7156 South Broadway.
okay.
Men,
Go on.
Yes, go ahead. You have another question?
may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna ask, does the Father Support Center also connect with, connect families with incarcerated individuals, fathers that are incarcerated? Is there a
As a
connection
part of
there?
their mission,
Uh-huh.
yes, they do.
So this could be sort of a natural transition?
It is a
if they're-
natural transition.
For,
those
they
families.
made connections with these people that are
Yes.
men that are incarcerated, and to connect them with their families.
Exactly.
And then your whole, I guess, the thought is that
The
you could
reunification, right.
the continuum could be that they get services as they, that's a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's very smart.
Okay, are there any more questions?
I just want to make a comment, thank you. This has been so informational
Mhm.
for me. I've learned so much today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Eddie.
Okay, well, I entertain a motion to
I-
remove Board Bill
I move we
145.
pass out Board Bill 145 when we do
Second.
pass.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Ortman,
Aye.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Behringer,
Aye.
Alderman Howard,
Aye.
Alderman Arnowitz,
Aye.
Chairman Flowers.
Aye.
We have 6 ayes and 0 noes.
So Board Bill 145 passes out of committee with due pass recommendation. Board Bill 146 is 330, well, the numbers have changed in the stuff I've gotten in email, so
Oh, really?
330, well, one was like 337, one was 330, but now I see it's $333,892 from HUD for the services of homelessness and planning process. So if you could please speak to that, Board Bill.
Okay. The Department of Housing and Urban Development provides monies under 2 funds to provide services for homeless individuals. There's the Continuum of Care, or the COC, and there's the ESG, or Emergency Shelter Grant. So the city is required as the lead agency for the COC in this area to apply for these funds on an annual basis. The COC funds typically cover all of those things that are non-shelter related. So it's permanent housing, transitional housing, supportive services for individuals who are disabled and homeless, and et cetera. Under the HUD regulation, the city can also apply for funds to plan for future services. And so the city has, and I apologize, I'm not as familiar with this, but the city has applied in 2013, in 2014, and in 2015 for planning grant dollars. So what you have in front of you is our request to utilize the money that was approved by HUD under the 2015 planning grant application that we submitted. So planning means that we have to prove to HUD that there is an effort on our part to not just do the same old thing every year for how the dollars are going to be used, but to plan for innovations and moving individuals from homelessness. And homelessness doesn't mean that they have to be chronically homeless. It can be preventing homelessness. This particular grant is to convene a regional planning process, which will be the first time that has occurred. The regional process for planning will include the City of St. Louis, Madison County, Illinois, East St. Louis, Belleville, St. Clair County, St. Louis County, St. Charles County, Lincoln and Warren counties, and Jefferson County. Each of those jurisdictions has their own COC, or Continuum of Care. The Continuum of Care is a group of service providers, community individuals who have an interest and expertise in serving individuals. And they come together to determine how those jurisdictions are going to provide services, but more importantly, what they're going to do and ask for in the next application. So this is an effort to bring all of those entities together to see if there can't be some agreement on what they will do as a shared group on requesting dollars. And I'll just give you an example. The city has been successful over the last 10 years in having most of the funds that we've requested from the COC application awarded. St. Louis County has not. And so I'll just use them as an example of what this process will help. And I know that you hear about the existence of homeless people who are from the county coming to the city because there are more services. What this will help is the St. Louis County COC to strengthen their application to hopefully get the funds that they ask for so that they can provide more services in St. Louis County. The same would be the case for St. Charles and others, because homeless cross jurisdictional lines. We have individuals who come here to the city of St. Louis from Illinois and Indiana and other states because they're transient. They get on the bus, they wind up here. At one point in time, HUD only allowed you to serve individuals who had been a resident of your jurisdiction. That's no longer the case. So because they are allowing for that movement and for individuals to be served, this will allow those 6 jurisdictions to figure out who can do what best, what monies do they need to do that, who is going to be in a position to do housing development for individuals who is not in a position, and who is in a position to generate the match dollars that are required to obtain these funds. The $336,892 is calculated by HUD. We don't ask for a specific dollar amount. HUD looks at what they're going to award to us under our overall COC application, and then they calculate a percentage of that for planning. So the $336,000 was a number that they derived.
And that amount will go to all the 6 jurisdictions?
That amount will go toward securing through a bidded process technical assistants and consultants who will handle the planning process, because none of us have staff who can be pulled to do the convening. So you've got focus groups that have to be pulled together, you've got databases that have to be reviewed, you've got a variety of other requirements that HUD has on what can be done with those dollars. Our staff within the city is just 5 individuals, and they are working on the implementation of all of those direct services programs that we have to satisfy in order to even be eligible for the next year's application. So this will be bidded out. In fact, I believe Mr. Roth released a bid last week so that individuals can begin looking at this and determine if they're in fact in a position to help the region to do this type of planning. So no, it won't go to a direct service provider, it will go to consultants.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take questions from the committee. Alderman Ortman, you have any questions?
Just to make it clear, okay, so this amount isn't just for the city of St. Louis.
This amount came to the city of St.
It came, so we're the ones that actually will be the primary, you know, put out
We put out the bid and
the
they will
RFP and-
subcontract with the entities.
Okay, and then also to kind of clarify, like, I'm familiar with, you know, with my ward or, you know, some of the providers, like we have Peter and Paul, and they have the shelter in Soulard, which is actually in the 7th ward, and then we have Garfield Commons, you know, in the 9th ward, the old Garfield School. You know, so they couldn't participate in this as far as, or will there be money at the end of the consultants where they can apply for, you know, for help for the homeless that they provide?
So the planning grant money cannot be used for direct services.
Okay, this is strictly
This is strictly for
planning.
planning.
Okay, will
And
there
they
be
do participate because they are members of the continuum of care.
for information type?
The continuum of care basically tells the city in your next application, and they've got 5 different committees, this is what the community says we need to go after money for.
Okay,
And so they participate in that way. They know the populations that they serve, they see the gaps in services. And they also have to understand what HUD is requiring, because HUD has made some very significant changes in what has to be done in order for us to even get the money. So Peter and Paul is, as a shelter, that's not COC money, that's emergency shelter grant money. And so they could not use any of this money for their shelter, just to clarify.
okay.
The 2 different pots of money.
But we do get information.
We do get information.
Do we get information like when it's freezing or, you know, when it's 100 degrees, when they open like 12th and Park?
So the 12th and Park
That would be an
shelter,
emergency, you know, thing too.
when you say, do we get information, what are you talking about?
I mean, does the city keep stats or the health department or, you know,
Okay.
who
I understand.
would get that information for, you know, if they put out 100 cots, I mean, we might end up with 125 people, you know, that might go there at that
Right.
time. So, I mean, that's gotta count for something, because
It does.
I know people that won't go into some of the shelters, but, you know, when it gets like that, they will go into, you know, the temporary, I guess is a good way to say it.
Right. So in answer to your first question, yes, we do have to keep stats on that. So you spoke specifically about 12th and Park. 12th and Park Recreation Center has been used for the last 2.5 years as a overflow emergency shelter during the cold weather months. When the temperature reaches a certain point, we are required to make sure that if there's not enough shelter beds, that we have a shelter available for that. And so that particular shelter was required to count the number of individuals who were there every night. And we had another entity also under emergency shelter grant funds, that's ESG, not COC, to go in and try to engage those individuals, so once they come out of the shelter in the morning, they go to the other agencies who can try to link them to longer-term services. We do have the stats every night, they're turned in every day, of who was in the emergency shelter at 12th and Park. Right now, 12th and Park is not being used as a shelter,
No, I know.
but we do gather those statistics. Every day they're required to turn them in.
Okay, Alderman Ortman, are you done with your questioning?
Yes, ma'am.
Alderman Boyd, you have any questions?
I do. But I want to make sure I'm clear. Is this a new set of funds? Is this a special grant planning? I know you said, I'm understanding,
Planning
it's probably
grant.
been a planning grant, I have that. But is this a new grant that just came out, or is it every year there's a planning grant?
It's not every year that we get a planning grant, but HUD has it within their scope of activities that jurisdictions can apply for a planning grant, but it's a competitive process.
Mhm.
So the city received a planning grant in 2013,
Mhm.
2014, and now 2015.
But this one in 2015 includes all these other, this regional
Because that's
planning
what
process.
Director Roth and the Continuum of Care said that they would use it for
Okay.
if they got one.
Okay.
And again, that's because there has been so much concern about the transience of homeless individuals and wanting to make sure that the other jurisdictions who have a responsibility to care for those individuals who are from there, rather than them coming to the city, that maybe this will help them plan for and apply for funds that they have not been successful in getting, and to look at who does it best.
Out of curiosity, I mean, it just seems like to me that the other counties abdicating their responsibility to St. Louis City has just been the status quo. So this group,
The other jurisdictions didn't get awarded a planning grant.
do they even service homeless people though?
Yes,
They
they
do?
all have a continuum of care.
Okay. But it's nothing like the city of St. Louis.
No, no, we get more money than anybody else, and we have more homeless individuals than the majority of those, and I think they would argue that, because HUD's definition for homelessness excludes a lot of people who technically are homeless. If you're couch surfing because you don't have any place to live, you're not counted as homeless because you had a place to sleep that night. And you may have to look for a different couch the next night, but because of the federal definition, you don't need it. So if you look at all of those jurisdictions and you see who's roaming the streets, and who doesn't get counted in the yearly point-in-time count, those other jurisdictions will argue that, yes, we do have homeless individuals, it's just that we can't include them in the count and they don't meet the definition. But right after that definition and that point-in-time count, that person might be on the street and they don't have a couch. And so it's always a moving target.
Okay, let me ask you this, from the 2014, we got planning dollars, right?
Yes.
Are we following that plan that we created,
So
or did we alter it? And the reason I'm asking this question, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going back
No.
to when,
CEDOF,
it is CEDOF, and
triplet.
yes, when they were here and they were talking about the continuum care programs, they're gonna have these 3 satellites, facilities that just kind of poof and went away. Then we end up with the project on Tucker, which to me was inconsistent with what the plan was all about. Are we gonna revisit that plan and move accordingly, or we're gonna use this opportunity with this grant to recreate a new plan? Because I've gotten confused over the past couple of years, the direction of the Health and Human Service Department as it relates to homeless.
So the Department of Human Services, and I don't know that I can speak directly to the satellites that you were talking about, because I wasn't directly involved to the extent that I am now and working with that staff. The satellites, as I understand it, would have required a number of different variables to fall into place. One, that HUD would have agreed to fund the renovation and construction of facilities that had not already been identified. We run into the case of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And so while you might put in a plan that your intent is to utilize a building in a certain ward or in a certain neighborhood to do certain things, once you start talking about it and there's disagreement by the community and they say, well, no, we don't want that there, you then change the plan. So the plan that was developed for satellites never included specific locations. It may have included specific providers who were willing to consider it. I don't know where that went in terms of an implementation. The 2014 planning grant did not include anything about the satellites. The 2014 planning grant was awarded to the city of St. Louis for the purpose of making sure, because we had lost the program manager and 2 of the senior staff in homeless services, to bring on consultants to assist our office to complete the COC applications, to make sure we got the money, to make sure that we followed all of the regulations, because we had brand new staff who had never gone through this. And so those individuals had to be trained and shown, this is what the COC application says, this is what you got to do. If you don't enter this information in, the city doesn't get anything. So that's what the 2014 money was used for. This is a brand new pot of money, and it's to make sure that there's this regional process, and this was the COC and Director Roth's brainstorm in consultation with these other jurisdictions, and I wasn't a party to those discussions.
Okay, last question. Thank you for being so informative. I heard you say Mr. Roth put out, I guess he put out RFQ or something.
RFP.
He put RFP. And will all the counties that's going to participate be involved in the selection process?
I can't answer that. We will probably have a representative from those jurisdictions to review the applications, but the selection of that application will follow what the city's procurement process is for professional
Okay.
services. So there'll be a representative from the president of the Board of
Right, I
Aldermen,
got
the
you.
mayor's office, etc.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Behringer?
First of all, I want to clarify, because I'm gonna out myself, I feel really bad. Valerie, what is your title and the department you're in? Because I'm making sure I clarify this, because, wow, go ahead.
So, I've been with the city now for 30 years. And for about 15 of those within the Department of Human Services. I am under the city's classification an executive assistant 2. Operationally, I'm now the deputy director. And so in that capacity, I work with each of the 5 divisions under Human Services, and those include Homeless Services, the Office on the Disabled, St. Louis Area Agency on Aging, Youth and Family Services, and Veteran Services. And I supervise the program staff for 3 of those divisions.
Wow. I just want to tell you, I am so impressed with your wealth of information and understanding so far on everything we've asked. I am beside myself, as in, I clearly need your phone number. I may need you at the state level.
Well, Mr. Rock is out of town, so maybe that was a good thing, I don't know.
Okay, so I do have a question, so I apologize. Because I understand, I just want to make sure I understand that this is basically a grant that's going to try and get us to talk to each other. And we're going to do that via hiring a consultant. The city will be in charge of the procurement of the consultant. And then we're going to try and go out there and get all these other areas to participate with us.
They've already agreed to participate.
Okay, and then how did they choose? Do we have any idea how they choose who will show up for these meetings for participation?
So each of those jurisdictions has an administrative entity like the Department of Human Services. St. Louis County has a Department of Human Services who administers their homeless services grant. So I don't know where within the political structure of St. Clair County and St. Charles County that responsibility rests, but the directors of those entities and their supporting staff, whoever they feel best to provide input, will be asked to participate. In addition, the process will be open to the continuum of care members. So I'll speak to who sits on our continuum of care. We have representatives from the State Department of Mental Health in the city's continuum of care. We have the Arch City Defenders. We have the social service providers and other homeless services providers. We have CDA, SLDC, the Affordable Housing Commission, and others who come to the meetings under different committee structures to talk about how they will deal with homelessness, either from a service level or as it relates to planning for affordable housing. So depending upon what's decided in terms of the content of the agendas and the structure for that planning process, those jurisdictions will determine who they will send to the process. I have only been a party to one planning process that wasn't necessarily related to homeless services, but different individuals were invited in based upon their expertise, and I assume that this will take place in that manner as well.
Does the chair of health also get a seat at any of these committee tables?
Our Department of Health,
No, the chair of this committee.
I think that would be a great idea, and I will make that recommendation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
State representative.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Because you wind up hearing about
Yes.
it after
That's right.
the awards.
Exactly.
And your wards are impacted by these activities. Okay.
Please don't retire. That's my last comment. Please don't retire.
I can't
All right, thank you. Alderman Honorwitz, do you have any questions?
What about me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Howard.
Just for clarity, the agency, the contractor, is going to gather data from all of these entities? Is that the way the process is going to go? Agree to participate?
I don't know what type of data is going to be extracted from each of those entities. But I know that there is some data that does not get shared, and that is baseline data on the names of homeless individuals.
Right.
The numbers of homeless individuals, how many times they stayed in the shelter, where they said they were from, how many times they came into the shelter, the success rates of certain programs, that kind of thing will get shared.
The
And,
numerically kinds of
Numerically,
things, okay,
yes.
data, not names, et cetera.
right,
I get it. But now, once that data is identified, are all of these government entities required to have a continuum of care
yes,
plan under federal law?
yes. All of this is driven by federal law.
Okay. And so the city's taking the leadership role in this.
In
and-
this particular.
In this
plan.
particular, and so the goal is to have a regional plan for addressing homelessness that we coordinate together.
That's correct, and if I can read from the application,
Okay.
if you want me to.
Yes, please.
It says that the city, St. Louis Continuum of Care seeks to convene an unprecedented regional planning process. Planning grant funds would be used in part to engage expert and technical advisors to assist the COC and United Way in organizing and, I'm sorry, these lights flickering.
I gotcha.
Executing this process. Advisors will be identified through a public procurement process, selected in part based upon their experience and ability to assist the COC in using social service data to develop a regional analysis and framework that would reveal opportunities for regional participation and coordination of homeless services, including potential mergers of COCs. Advisors also would be selected based upon their experience and ability to help organize, engage, convene, and document a formal regional COC planning process. The COC also seeks, as a part of this project, to strengthen and sharpen its capacity to serve as a regional leader in homeless services.
I think that's very forward. And now, once this plan is developed, how long are they planning out? I mean,
So the
is
money
there a
has to be,
timeframe on it?
yes, the planning grant dollars, once they are awarded, go from January 1 through December 31st. So this money has to be used within a 12-month period beginning January 1, 2017 and ends December 31st, 2017.
And if we don't use it, we lose it.
Correct.
Okay. So is it anticipated that we will be able to consume all of this and have a plan by the year end?
The RFP was released, I think, the week that Director Roth went on vacation, and those bids are due in, I believe, the end of October. And so the selection process will take place shortly after that, the review of those bids and the selection, so that a contract can be in place so that someone can start January 1.
Good.
It's a race.
And not to sound ignorant, but what is the continuum of care?
The continuum of care is, if I can send a definition to Alderwoman Flowers, and then she can give that to you, because it's a long definition and it's mandated, but it's a body that has to convene for the purposes of directing how homeless services and preventative services with HUD dollars will be utilized.
Okay. Can you also send the definition of homeless?
I'm right here.
Can't see you.
Because, it's, what our framework for homeless is one thing. Like you said, it could be couch surfing and so forth, but the federal definition is very specific, and that's what drives
I'll do that.
how services are delivered.
So I have action items to get the recidivism rates for both of the current providers of reentry. Ms. Behringer wants to know if CWIT is a United Way agency. I need to send the definitions for homelessness and the definition for the continuum of care. And I am going to inform Director Roth that Alderwoman Flowers needs to be put on the planning committee.
Okay.
If you need any help with that.
Yeah, my co-chair over here. Okay. Thank you, Alderman.
Work night.
Alderman Onerous, do you have any questions?
Madam Chairman, no, I think Ms. Russell done a fantastic job answering a lot of questions and very informative, and I really appreciate it. You do a
You're
great
welcome.
job.
That's what you paid me for.
Thank you.
It's a lot of hats. I had to look up
lot
continuum
of
care
bonus
too,
with
and it said basically guides,
So we get a lot
tracks
of bonus
patients
with
over
you.
time, so it's just, sounds like a lot of data that the organizations compile and so forth. So I'm happy to hear there's some planning amongst different jurisdictions to figure out what they can do to better improve their services to, provide services to their homeless community. And it just not be one municipality that deals with it the majority of the time. So I appreciate that. If there's no more questions, I entertain a motion for Board Bill 146.
So moved.
Second.
Previous role.
No objection to previous roll. Board Bill 146 passes out of committee. Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
So with Board Bill 145, if you could just remind me of process, this meeting has taken place and then there will be two other
So that
discussions?
it'll be second read tomorrow,
Okay,
and then it'll be perfected on the following week,
okay,
and probably moved to perfection calendar, so like 2 steps it can take.
Final pass.
So it can possibly be perfected and finally passed, not this Friday, but next Friday.
okay,
So, yeah.
okay. Is there any objection of this body to my placing a placeholder on the October E&A board meeting so that we can try to move forward on getting a contract amendment for the provider for the $250,000? Otherwise, we'll wait until the middle of November before it gets passed, and then we have to.
No, I don't see any objections. Anybody have any objections to that? I know we just got the money pretty much on both grants pretty quick, and they're both starting in January, so we understand the process.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If you have any other questions, I will leave my business cards here.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Wow, I just felt like I took a webinar.
The Health and Human Services meeting has convened.
Second. Adjourn.
It's adjourned. Thank you.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Yes, adjourned. Do we have to make